Hey everyone, Amy Chowgirl here, and some people have been asking me about my fursuits and how I make them, and I decided to make a full tutorial for you guys in a few parts. This will not be the only part, but for this one I'm going to get you started. It's not going to actually show anything right now because I don't have anything to work with yet. I am going to be making a partial for my friends, so that will be what I'll be using for like the foaming and everything. So first you need to know what style you're going to use, and style makes a big difference in how it's going to turn out. What I mean by style is what you use as the base. This base can be made from balaclava, which is it's like a ninja hood, except these aren't like those ski masks, because ski masks are made for keeping you warm, and in a fursuit you want to stay cool. So balaclavas are essential. I'm sorry, I said the word essential. They're not essential. They are pretty good for fursuits because they can keep you cooler, because they're made sort of like Under Armour. For people who, I don't know if they sell Under Armour in countries besides America, but it's basically like sort of like a swimsuit material. I'm not sure if balaclava is made like this, but you basically get the idea. Another one, the one that I use, is plastic canvas, and that is more like, you've probably seen a lot of people use it. It's where you make sort of a mesh on the Stupid phone, shut up, phone, shut up. Hopefully my mom picks it up. Okay. So, after my phone shuts up... that is the most annoying ring I've ever heard. Okay, it stopped. Yeah, so as I was saying, plastic canvas is the method I use. It's more like a mesh that goes over your head, and some people don't like to use it because the plastic canvas does tend to rub up against your face, but I've never had a problem with it. Usually it's not hard to use, but I'll go over that a little more later. Another one is a foam base, and that's basically you make your base out of foam, but foam is pretty expensive, so you want to get the least amount you possible. So I don't use the foam base that much. I actually used it once, but that was for like a fake fursuit head that I was making because I was really bored and I had like all this extra foam, which I'm very regretting now. So anyway, sorry, I have like a cold, so I'm like sniffling. So the pros and cons to each style. First, balaclava, and there's many other styles besides this. I'm just saying these are the three most common styles. The pros to balaclava is obviously it's a little cooler in the balaclava. I'm not very sure on this because I'm only going by what I've seen and what people have said, but it's hot either way when you're in that suit. The other pros to it are when you're making the head, it tends to fit more to your face. When others, it sort of like bulks around your head. How do I explain that? It fits more to your shape because the balaclava is like tight fitting to your face, but it can stretch. So another con to that is that if you buy one, it will probably fit everybody. Another is when you're shaping the foam on the balaclava, if you make a mistake, you can simply rip the foam off. The cons to this, however, is that sometimes the placement with the parts can get a little off and you might find yourself redoing things a lot. Another is you need to buy a dummy head. And this is actually one of the hardest techniques to do. The reason being is that you have to use elastic on the head. There has to be an elastic band that goes over your head and goes along your chin for the moving jaw. So it's a little bit trickier to do. Other than that, it's a pretty good method. The second one, the plastic canvas, is the one that I prefer. The pros to it is that it's a really sturdy build. You don't have to use a dummy head, but you can if you want. It makes it a little bit easier. You have the shape of the head done, and it's easier to form the foam. You use less foam than you would on a foam base or balaclava base. And it's sort of easier to mold. Now, the cons to this is, one, again, the mesh rubbing up. Two, things can become sort of unaligned, like the jaw. I've had this happen to me on both of my heads. They've been a little off. Sorry, my mom popped in. Yeah, so, anyway, as I was saying about the cons, yeah, the lineup is bad. Let's see. Sometimes it can get difficult if you made something a little bit too big. You always want to make the mesh a bit smaller than it's supposed to be. Not around the head, but I mean like the form of the muzzle and stuff like that. You always want to make it a little smaller than you want it to be, because the foam will take up that room, and if you make it as big as you want it to be, you can't add the foam, or else it's going to be like really large, and it'll be oversized. So you got to be careful with that. Another is the hinge on the jaw. Well, the hinge on the jaw is actually a bit easier than other ones, besides for the balaclava, which you just glue the foam to your face. But the thing with, I think she's about to pop down again. If she does. Okay. Sorry. With the mesh, sorry, it's hard to come up with this. I think the biggest thing about the mesh is that it gets a bit offline. The way the hinge works is a screw, or another way is fasteners, but really that's a cheap method, and the only way you should actually use that is if you really need to. I don't recommend it because it's flimsy, it really has a way of breaking, and I just don't think it's good to be cheap sometimes. It may be good to be cheap on other things, but for a fursuit head that after you put that foam and everything on it, the jaw is going to be there, it's just too much of a risk that you don't want to take. Alright, so moving on to foam base. The pros of foam base, I guess, is that, well, it actually is a pretty sturdy base, and like the balaclava, you're gluing it right onto your face practically. So it can be a bit easier to use. The one thing that I think a lot of people have trouble though on the foam base is the moving jaw, if you're going to add one. If not, this base would probably be perfect for non-moving jaws, but it sometimes is a bit harder to use this one too, and sometimes it can be unreliable. So, yeah, that's more the cons and the pros mixed together. So, yeah. I think I'm going to leave it off at that for that part. So now, the next thing that you have to think about is the planning. after you got the base you want, obviously you're going to need to know how much money this is going to cost. Now, you have to know that fur is not cheap at all. It ranges from $20 to like $30 for a yard. And also, I do not recommend going to the fabric store to buy fur, because I got my first one at Joann's, and it is some of the crappiest fabric I've ever had. So be cautious when you're getting fur. I got my Luxray one at fabric.com, and that's the cheapest I found. It's $20.98 a yard, and if you have over $35, you get free shipping. So, if you're doing a full suit, you really have to watch out for this. The full suit, just the fur alone, costed me $104, and the rest of the materials are actually much cheaper. So, yeah, you're gonna have to think about all this. So, once you know if you have enough money, if you're doing a partial, it's going to cost a lot less. It'll cost about $70, about $60 to $70, depending on how much fur you have. You'll need probably roughly around 2 yards of fur, but if you have more than one color, you're going to have to get more than that. And on fabric.com, they do have a choice where you can select half yard, because the sewing stores, you have more of an advantage than online, because the sewing stores, you can actually tell them, like, I want a foot of fabric instead of I want a half yard, so you can save more money and you can get exactly the amount you need. When on the online stores, they might make you pay for a full yard when you only need like a quarter of that. So it's sort of a disadvantage when you're online. But there's not many stores that have good quality fur, so think about that. So now, once you know you'll have enough money, next is to start drawing it out, and I always draw out my fursuits more because I'm excited, because I really like making these. So I use programs sometimes to do this because it's a lot easier with the different layers. First, I start out by drawing a human head, just the outline of the human head, then start drawing the mesh around it, and then add the foam, and then see what it'll look like when it's completed. So this will sort of help you as a reference for what it's going to look like when it's done. And if you get it all sort of staged correctly, you can end up with a really good reference. The one that I used was Paint Tool SAI or Paint Tool Psi, I don't know, whichever you want to call it. I used that because it was quick, and it has a layer tool that's really easier to use, and Photoshop takes like 5 minutes just to get onto the program, so I really want to use something I can get onto faster. So, yeah, I just sketch it out in there, and this will give you a better view of what you're doing. And I guess that's pretty much it for the first video. Look out for my other ones that are coming up. See you soon.